Today we're going to talk about dashboards. Dashboards is relatively new to the platform, a couple of releases. It truly is fairly simplistic in what you can do, how you make it happen, but there's some pretty powerful features here. With dashboards, what we have not done and may not ever do, is the ability for a user to come in and create a widget and put a bunch of filters on it and do it. That we have, because now you're upping the skill set and the level of support we need to make that happen is crazy. It's not to say, and we will likely put out a document sometime in the near future on how you, as a partner, can go out and create a widget, because it's literally it's a set of views, it's a table with some entries, and now you have a tool that a user can go and plug into their dashboard. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So typically dashboards, we've been through this before. Here's kind of all the links. We have the ability to put links down to any internal module. We have links that we can put down to any external page. We have a number of fairly simple widgets, a report viewer where by functional group I can throw a set of reports up there that they can get to, links to our not only our internal applications, but with requests. We have an API built in that I can do a service request, I can do a move request. So I can create a request, and the widget actually will allow me to add a category to it, so it'll pre-populate things. We have all of our Finder functions that can be put in as a desktop widget, and then we have a number of predefined charts and graphs that we can put in on the desktop. If we need additional things, we can talk about them on a customer basis. We can create things that are individual to the customer for a fee. And as I said, we'll talk about how maybe you can take those things and create them on your own. And then to create a dashboard, you're just gluing those things together. And then one last piece is KPIs, which once again, all predefined. So let's talk about how do we create a dashboard. So let's go over to Platform Administration, Dashboard Manager. Dashboards are created by functional group. So I have a number of functional groups in my setup here. I'm going to take Local Administrator, for which I don't believe I have a dashboard set up at all. And I start with a clean palette. And essentially what we have, if you take a look at the bottom, this is a pretty good guide as to what are the pieces that I can pull together to create a dashboard. I can create tabs. I can add KPIs to those tabs. I can add widgets to those tabs. And I can add reports to a tab that contains a report viewer. So those are really the pieces we have. I can keep adding these things, so I'm adding some tabs. And how do I rename them? How do I, what gets displayed to the user? All I have to do is click on something, and you'll see on the right-hand side of the attributes assigned to it. So I'm just going to call this tab 1, and therefore, logically, this would be tab 2. And then following my logic, I have to actually save it. That would be helpful. When you do attributes, you do have to save them. So there's tab 2. We'll say this is tab 1. And then following my logic, we're going to name the last tab another tab. So that's how we kind of name the pieces. And that same concept, and we will demonstrate it as we move forward, same concept applies to anything in the dashboard. While it has a name that's set there by default, you can change it. So folks that are using different languages can change the name there. We can talk about in the future how we may be able to alias some of these things so that even constructing a dashboard, you can set some things. So let's go to tab 1. We have our tab. We want to add some KPIs. What is a KPI? KPI takes two basic forms. Hey, here's a label that just gives you a number of something that's going on. Let's take a look at what we have. These are all predefined in the database. There's nothing for the user to change other than a name on this. Actually, I'm going to take one step back. A tab is comprised of columns, you can't see them, and rows. How many? Just think of it as a spreadsheet, a grid. That's where I can plug things into. We have put constraints on things. So this tab actually has 4 columns and 5 rows. KPIs are a separate toolbar altogether.
Okay.
So when I add a KPI to a tab, it does not take up a column or a row. So on KPIs, these are all predefined things. We've tried to do a pretty good mix of things. We've given them some categories. Data integrity, there's a lot of folks that are starting to use the data integrity stuff. This is to be able to look at, geez, do I have duplicate space numbers? Do I have assets with missing classifications, so that they can keep their data clean? They come to a dashboard, it immediately lets them know, geez, sometime last night, somebody added a new space or a new asset, didn't classify it. I want to go in and either classify it or ring up somebody and tell them to go square away the data in here. Some move management pieces, some maintenance management pieces, just a whole bunch of kind of an eclectic collection of stuff. Let's take a look at this KPI and this KPI. We're going to add these two, so all I do is select them and click Save, and it now adds them to the top. If I click on one on the right-hand side for KPIs, I can change the name of what appears here. So let's just do space per person, and I'll hit Save. So now I've just changed the title that shows up on the dashboard there. I can put a suffix to the value, and in this case, I might want to put square feet. I can put a low limit and a high limit and add a message to it. The message shows up when you hover over a KPI. So this is probably a bad example of it, although maybe it's not. So maybe I want a high limit. I never want to give folks in my organization more than, let's just see if we can make this happen. Never want to give them more than 50 square feet to live in, and I'm going to have a message in here, too much space, and save it. So now I've just set up my KPI, and we'll take a look at what that looks like in the dashboard. This particular KPI, and there's no indication here, maybe I need to do something along those lines. This doesn't have a grid associated with it because there's no logical way to set up a grid associated with this. But available seats does have a grid associated with it. In other words, when this thing shows up on the dashboard, if I have spaces that have an occupancy or a planned head count of greater than 1, and there's nobody in them, or there's less people in them than there is seats in them, I am going to see a list of those spaces. So let's take a look at what we've created here. I have to log in. I shall log out, I think, and log back in as admin. And we'll go to the dashboard. And there's my KPI. So we have 85 square feet. We set this as 50. So you'll note that this is turned to red, and actually my little note isn't showing up. I'll take a look at that. But if I click on this, nothing's going to happen because this is just kind of an indicator. In this particular case, this is, and you'll see, how can I tell from a user standpoint what I can click on and what I can't? When I hover over this one, you'll see nothing changes. When I hover over the other one, you'll see that there is a visual change, meaning I can click on this thing. So when I click on this one, it's actually going to give me a list of all of those spaces where seats are available. And then I can delve into an individual record if I want to, and move people in and out and whatever. And then when I close that down, it is going to refresh the dashboard so that if I've made changes to the underlying data, those changes will be immediately reflected. So, I won't even bother doing it. But so there's tabs and there's KPIs. Let's go back and let's go add some additional stuff. All right, so we created our tab. We put a couple of KPIs on it. Now we want to actually start adding some widgets to it. So let's talk a little bit about how this lays out. We have 4 columns and 5 rows on this piece here, and we build our dashboard from left to right, top to bottom. So as we start to consume those squares within the grid, it's going to push the next thing around. We don't have a drag and drop to a specific location on the grid. We just go from left to right and top to bottom. So I'm going to add an asset finder. So I put the asset finder in there. I click on it. Once again, I can change the text. So I'll just put my asset finder. We can change the icon that shows up here by just simply changing the path here to an image. And then we can tell it how many rows and how many columns does this take up. We'll have that finder take up 2 columns, and we'll save it. And there's my asset finder. Let's go put another widget in there. And let's just put a link to the contacts application. That's an application link. I'm going to save that. And once again, I'm going to click on this, and I can change the name. So I'll change the name to that. And once again, I think I'm going to set that for 2 columns so that basically I have these 2 big things at the top of it. Save it, and there's that widget. And you'll see the names have changed and everything's changed on it. Let's go add one more thing to this because it's the same thing as we move along. I'm going to go add another widget. And in this case, let's go add, all right, let's add a move request widget. So we'll add 2 things to this. So I'm going to add a move request widget. I'm going to select on this. So I'll just type in here. Request to move, and once again, you can put this description on this one, ends up down below. I think I'm going to leave that as 1 row, 1 column, and we'll just do a save on that. You still have 4 columns and rows, this one spanning 2 columns, this one spanning 2 columns, this one spanning 1, and then I'll add a chart next to that that'll take up kind of the remaining space. Yeah, why not? This is actually a custom chart that I just built for a demo. So we're going to add that in there, and we'll do 3 columns on that, and we'll do 3 rows on that, and we'll save it. And let's go take a look at what this dashboard now looks like. Now that, as a matter of fact, I believe if I were to let's go put something else in there. So let's do a link to the drawing application. And that's going to end up right there. So let's now log out and go take a look at what this thing looks like. And there's what my dashboard now looks like. So I have a couple of KPIs. I have tabs I don't have anything else on. Asset finder, I don't know. Let's just do fire extinguisher. I don't know if it has a location or not. So this actually has 2 locations, this fire hose. So we can kind of switch between the 2 of these things. People is just going to bring me to, it's going to open up in a new tab, that contacts dialog. Making a move request is literally going to open up the request form, and it's going to predefine this with move management so I can fill out that stuff. I can navigate to the drawings thing. Once again, it'll open up that module in a separate window, and we have nothing open because this is a new user logging in for the first time. And then I have this chart in here that I put together for a demo for somebody else. But generally speaking, this is really just taking a box full of puzzle pieces, gluing them together to deliver to a client some meaningful information for them.